All right, so we're going to start off here today by doing rod bearing clearances on this M5. So if you don't know, this is BMW M5 2006. This is S85 5-liter V10. All right, I have a bunch of stuff here we're going to use to install these, and one including is PLASTIGAUGE. We're going to show you how to use that today. Philip's not here, so it's going to be a little bit tough, but we'll get her done. We got the box for our brand new ACL bearings over there on the workbench. And then the last thing we got, if I could not dump these out on the ground, that'd be great, is our ARP rod bolts. So this set of rod bolts is about $385. Set of bearings anywhere from $160 to $200. Our PLASTIGAUGE, $5.99 at the AutoZone or wherever you want to get it at. So what we're going to do, I'm going to set this down here on the back of the Porsche like we should never do. There's two pieces of PLASTIGAUGE in here, right? We have a red strip and a green strip. And these are all, let me touch your screen here. You could use either one of these, but how it's set up is the green strip goes from 0.001 clearance to 0.003, and the red strip goes from 0.002 to 0.006. So you actually measure a bigger bearing clearance. You take them out and flip them over. On the back is all the metric. So start with, make sure you're not using the metric ones first. You know what I mean? Like, don't do it wrong. This is one thing. If you do it wrong, your engine's gonna grenade. So don't do that. Be very cautious of it. I'm so close to this camera, it's scary. And so we're gonna go ahead and prep up one of these rod bearings to do, and we'll show you every step of the process. Okay, so we're at cylinder number 1, number 2, right here. This is kind of the easiest one camera-wise to shoot. If I could even get that up in there exactly, I think I had it pretty much perfect. And we're going to do this one first. So the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna get our, use the impact if you want to take them off. It doesn't matter on this. We're not reusing the rod bolts, so it doesn't matter. Now, we are going to use these rod bolts, first of all, to check the PLASTIGAUGE. Then we're throwing them away. So what we're looking for here, our clearance should be somewhere between 0.0023 and 0.0025. That's what the manufacturer specification is. So let's go ahead and pull these. Okay, so since that's off of there, let me set this impact down for a drop it on my foot. We're gonna take our old rod bolts, we're gonna stick them in the holes a little bit, wiggle them. That's gonna come right off. So this was a bearing that was pretty good. We're gonna leave that. We're gonna push this rod up through here a little bit. Hopefully I can slide the bearing out. With odds, right? Okay. So on the tops, this top actually is a little bit more wore than the rest of them. You can see there. Well, what that means, but like I thought, this should be done. This should be changed. You never trust one of these cars. And this one you can read really clearly. This is Corvette 77 bearing with a part number stamp 0.89. Okay, so first thing I do is take the other bearing out of the shell. We're gonna go, Jesus, pop this out of here like so. We're gonna take a rag, wipe the oil out of the cap, wipe the oil off the journal, and the other side of the rod. We're gonna clean all that stuff up. We're gonna put those bearings right there so we don't misplace them or lose them. Because at the very end, I want to be able to show you guys all the bearings next to each other. Okay. We're all done here with that. All I'm going to do is take this rag, wipe those journals off. This is a microfiber. It's not going to have a bunch of lint come off of it. I'm going to have to set this out on my hand. A lot of you guys are like, oh, I only use terry cloths whatever grade from whatever store. I don't care. That's fine. Use whatever the hell you want. If you leave fuzz on it, it's your car, right? It's not mine. Okay. That's all good and clean. We're gonna go get a couple of fresh bearings. On ACL bearings, they're not separate top to bottom at all. So what we're gonna do here is we're going to get my hair in that greasy bracket first. Oh, sweet. We're gonna go up in here. We're gonna look and see where our little deals are first. It's so hard to push up. There it is. Okay. We're gonna go in here and slide this bearing, and the cap. Now we're not gonna lube these bearings up to start with. We're gonna put it up here, put the notch in the notch. If you ever put bearings in, you know the drill. If you never put bearings in before, I would not, I mean, I can't tell you not to try this. You can do whatever the hell you want, right? Be very, very cautious. Make sure if you get stuck, there is somebody to help you that knows what they're doing. Because you cannot put these back together on a maybe at all. Make sure the bearing is nice and centered. Feel and look, it is centered. You tap it out there just a hair more with something plastic that's not going to damage anything. So handle of a small screwdriver, it needs to go up like a 1/16 of an inch. Maybe this guy here. Give her a little tappity. Make sure it's all seated correctly. And we're going to come back in with our other half. We're going to install this into our cap. You see what I mean? The little nub has to go on the little notch. Okay. That's why I couldn't do up there is push hard enough because it was a weird angle to push it in right. Now what we have to do, we have to make sure that this is perfect. We have to go in here and make sure that this is on the right side. The crank journal, we'll pull this back down. Okay. I can see here which side goes on which. So let's stop right here before we go any further. I'm going to bring you over to the workbench and we're going to show you exactly what to do here. Okay, so by all judgments, we could use either one of these since we're in the middle. So let's just use the green one. So in the middle of this, there is a little green strip. Looks like a piece of dental floss. We're not even going to wrap the whole thing. We're going to take this out. We're going to take a bearing out just to fit it. And we're going to want to break that just so it's the width of the bearing, right? Just like that. You're going to end up with a piece of plastic gauge in there. Jesus, I don't know if I can show you guys that or not. Maybe. It's just the width of the bearing laying across like that. There you go. So let's go over to the car. All right. And then we got our piece of plastic gauge in our hand. And I got the bearing right here. So essentially what we're gonna pre-do the bolts in, or at least one of them in here. Oh, come back here on the greasy bracket again. I love it. That's what I was wanting. It's gonna go up there like this. We're gonna lay a piece of plastic gauge across that. That's pretty damn small, boys. Then we're going to essentially did we get it? Should be. I finger this one on here. Get your other bolt. Oh hell. I better look. You might do this once or twice. On the edge stand is so easy. In the car, not so much. It is on there, okay? But it is important to wipe all the oil off of that first, because you're not going to be able to always see if you have oil on that or not. And it might cause a problem. So let's go ahead and bring it back here. Just barely snug them. Just so I can walk away and get the torque wrench. Okay, that's all we need. We're gonna grab our torque wrench and then we're gonna set that up. Okay, torque wrench is set up. First, start off, we'll go 6. That's basically just snug. We're probably damn near there. I'm just gonna snug it. The first torque setting on these factory settings to get even. Now remember, these are not the torque settings for the factory bolts or for the ARP bolts. These are only for the factory. Okay, and we're gonna go 20 Newton meters. Okay, 20 on this one. And on rod bolts, we always go, again, to make sure they're good. Okay? Now we need to go 130 degrees. So we're gonna go toggle this to 130. Okay? That's why I don't like this. Here's the thing. Here's the thing. Okay. I feel like this torque wrench did not just do that right. I went a little ways, it didn't move at all, then I went the rest and it was fine. That's why we're not using factory bolts. Whoop, clear. Let's do it again. All that way. Well, I guess it is. I guess it is going, but I don't know. I don't like that at all. 100. Okay, there's that. Let's go ahead and break them loose. Okay. Put the old torque wrench over here where it's not going to get bumped. You never want to bump on these torque wrenches, never want to do anything to it that could damage it. We're going to set it back on its box on the countertop out of the way. And now we're going to pull this off. Let's see what we got. Okay, perfect. Let me stop you guys here. We'll go back to the workbench. All right, so you see your little streak right there. We're gonna get our little tape thing. And a lot of guys cut these off. I mean, you don't have to cut that off, right? There's like really no legit reason to do that unless you just want to. So we're gonna go on our graph here and we're gonna look. Jesus. There we go. Focus. So we have 0.25, 0.38. Let me flip it around so I can read it. 0.025, 0.038, 0.051, and 0.076. But we're on mil, right? See, it's just that easy to mess it up. I flip it over. So if you're gonna cut it, you can cut off one little bar of this. So you could do this. Without a camera guy, it's very tough to do this. So let's go ahead and measure this thing up. Just by looking at it, looks like we're anywhere from 0.02 to 0.015. The bigger bar is tighter clearances. It's opposite what you think. I can tell by looking at this, we're totally good. So we're gonna go in here. We're somewhere right between the middle, I would say, of 0.02. We're like 0.002, my bad. So we're looking at 0.0023 to 25. So 0.0024 is perfect. It's bigger than 0.002, but not as big as 0.0015. In fact, I'm going to say it's probably right at, just a hair over 0.002. Probably 0.0023, I would say, to 24 on the bar. So that's perfect. Here's the thing. You have to check this. Like when we do other cars, you can tell nothing's been touched, or the car isn't to the mileage. But like when we do the big crank, hopefully you guys are right here. We do the big crankshaft, which is sitting right here on the shelf. We have to do this with this. And actually, almost forgot. We did get the rods back for this white car, and everything's good. So we're ready to start reassembling on the white car also. So if you didn't get enough V10 stuff, you haven't got filled your tank of V10 nonsense, we have another one getting ready to go together. So there is that. All those rods did turn out to be good. The oil I seen stuck in the little, or not the oil, the lead I seen stuck in the valley was not damaged to the rod. Look at the bolt situation. Good God. It was actually bearing material stuck in it. So the other car, if these bearings did spin in the cap, they weren't much. They must have done after it set for a long time and they got started. But it had no damage. Luckily, the bearing material was way softer on that car than the cap was. The machine shop checked it all, said they're perfect. They cleaned them up for me, resurfaced everything. Everything looks perfect. Can't wait for that. Okay, so we know this is good. What we're gonna do, take a little carburetor cleaner. We're gonna wipe that off this and off the crank side. I think at that point in time, we need to push the rod back up. We need to pre-lube everything and keep moving. Okay, guys, so what we're gonna do, let me grab our carburetor cleaner. We're gonna do one bearing for you here on camera. We'll put it on time lapse, do the rest. I don't know. Without film being here, it is very difficult to do that. So we'll take a little carburetor cleaner, brake parts cleaner. One little squidge on there. That stuff is surprisingly hard to get off though. It's almost like a little strip of wax or something in that arrangement. We'll wipe it off the bearing side also. Kind of weird, it came right off of that. Now what we're gonna do is go up in here with our pre-lube. We're gonna push this back up like so. Probably a lot easier. We took the spark plugs out first, to be honest, because we're pushing against the compression. All right, the pre-lube goes in like that. Okay. Pretty greased up. Put a little bit on the journal. I'm gonna put a dot on our other side here. This is using this. Somebody turn the camera thing around. Awesome. Can't see what's going on. This is using this engine lube assembly, the Stay Lube, whatever we're going to call it, and that's what we're using. That's what we use in the last probably 10 engines we've done. And we're just going to put a little bit on here, and nothing's blown up yet, so I mean, this can't be too bad, right? Then we have our ARP lube. So they give you this little packet of stuff in the ARP box. We have to prelude these bolts. So in the instructions ARP, it says you could either torque to 50 foot-pounds, or you can do the torque to yield and do it by degrees. But the whole reason why we buy the ARP bolts is to get out of that margin of error. We're just going to put a little poopy on the end of there, just like that, about that much. Okay, let's look at the bearing, make sure the bearing is still centered. It's still in there really good. Put all the way down on the crankshaft. We're going to go back in with our bolt. We just put the grease on. Now on these, you actually look up in there, you can see how it matches up. Because you can't flip the cap around. If you flip the cap around, things are not going to end well for you, I promise. That's going to go just like that. So let's put it up in there, like so. We're going to finger tighten these bolts to start. My fingers are so greasy, it's hard to do anything. Should you stay there? Let me go and get one more bolt here, put the ARP lube on that, and then we're going to go back up in here and put this bolt in. Rub that around a little bit. I want to knock it off. Okay. I will get my 1/2 inch impact and run them home, right? Joking, don't do that. Don't do that. Engine building is very easy, but there's no room for mistake. That's pretty much the best way I could put it. There is zero margin for mistake on any of this. So when you're buying stuff, you try to get the bearings and the rod, bolts, any kind of pieces, so there's no mistake. Another thing you want to do is make sure you take out any chance there being any issue. Like do whatever necessary machine work, have the machine shop check everything. Don't give there any possibility at all to have any kind of error whatsoever. Okay, so we got 12 point, these are 12.7/16. I had one of those in all my sockets. And so we're gonna use a little 3/8 wrench. Like I said, snug them up at first. Just make sure they're good and even. And then there is no instructions, you just want to end up at 50 foot-pounds. So I usually like to go in 2 different steps. We're gonna crank her up to about 20. Okay. And now we're going to go up to 50. Should be in our final setting here. All right, there's 50. We'll go back and forth, back and forth. Check them both, and that's it. That's actually done. Done. Now we just got 9 more. So it just takes a little bit of time to do this. It does suck too, since the heads of the bolts for the factory bolts to the other bolts are different size. So you're going down the line one at a time. It takes a lot longer to switch out sockets. We're just gonna go down, just right down the line. There's no reason to stagger. When you start staggering stuff and doing this or doing that, you usually mess stuff up. Figures when you're done, you take it back apart. These bolts, you should be able to reuse ARP bolts, but we don't, I mean, that was unclear. So we don't want to take them back off. Once they're on, or leave them on forever, and that's it. All right, got number 2 in here. We're just gonna go in and finish it up. I think we'll just leave our our torque wrench set to 50. We're gonna snug. First one's up. If you ever have any inclination there may be something not done right at all, just take it back apart. Take it back apart and fix it right then. That's it. And then also watch, we got to turn the engine over to get to our next one. If the engine's hard to turn for any reason, stop, go back, fix it. We got, let me turn this a little bit more. This is another good one. But now on M5s, remember, I did not pull the tops out, the top bearing out, and the top bearing is always the worst one. All right, because it fires, it pushes down on it, and so forth. So it's gonna be a little bit interesting to see on these top ones how it is. A lot of times you guys are like, oh, I can't get the bearings out. You push them to the side, wiggle them back and forth, and 9 times out of 10 they come right out. That top one's got a lot more wear on it than usual. I mean, than the bottom one, not more than usual. Like all these bearings actually, compared to my other M5, the red one, the maroon one, this one actually turned out really good. We're gonna take our microfiber up here, wipe that off, wipe the cap out just a little bit, and let's go ahead and reassemble. If you're doing bearings on a V8 car or on a 4-cylinder, this is not going to take you very much time at all to complete this. Okay. Make sure when you put them in there, they're centered. They're not hanging out left or right. It's all in there tight like it is. A drop of our pre-lube. On the bearing, we'll wipe a little bit around here. We'll line it back up. Probably the hardest thing there is to do is to try to film a rod bearing video with the engine in the car, to be honest. All right, next up, we're going to put this in here. Like I said, little notch in the bearing, lines up a little notch on there. That's how we do it. We'll clip it in, get it close. Slide it in. And make sure it's flush on both sides like it is. I'll drop a pre-lube. And then 9 times out of 10, you can just look at this and tell that this goes like this. Oh, see, now we're getting ahead. Let me get a bolt in my hand. A rod bolt, and of course a little dab of ARP grease on the rod bolt, like so. I'm gonna go up in here, take a look at it like so. And that's gonna go just like that. You should be able to push it up on there, and it should close the gap on the broken cap part where they crack them in half. If the gaps are not right, it's on there wrong. If you have all these rods out, all the bearings out on the table, all the caps, and you knock the whole thing on the floor and get all mixed up, you're not totally screwed. It's going to take you a while. You have to match each cap, make sure it pushes down flush to it, make sure everything's fine. Then you can reassemble everything. 9 times out of 10, there will not be marked, match marked from the cap to the rod. So also be careful of that. And we're going to put this one together, then we're going to cut the camera and come back when we got it all done. Because let's be honest here, who wants to sit here and watch some old man for an hour and a half, probably was going to take to get this totally done. Take bolts in, or take bolts out, put bolts in. Take bolts out, put bolts in. All right, and then that is good. Let's go grab our torque wrench, we'll snug it. This one will be done. We're using 3/8 torque wrench here. My big one's a 1/2 inch, it's very long. We just don't really need that. And on that digital one, when you set it down, it'll turn itself off. So it's not really like the most convenient to use for this. These are not high torque applications at all, obviously. We're gonna go in here, we're gonna find her snug. All right, they're snug. We're just gonna keep on rolling back and forth till we get to 50. One more time. And that's it, boys. Not really too difficult. All right, so here's the bearings out. Here's all the top bearings. They're pretty chowdered like they always are, a lot worse. Here's all the bottom bearings. Usually typical for a car we see, like some of these are pretty good, but they're all wearing. So either this engine's a little older than we thought it was, got some more miles than we thought it was, or we have some spark knocking issues, especially on this, and even possibly these. Michael did say he just put brand new injectors in it, so it could have been an old injector issue. We'll definitely, well, I was supposed to get it running, we'll get all that figured out. But these were caught in time. And this is typical what you see with the car. This state here, probably 80, 90,000. So if you think that you're getting away with it and you got 120 or 150 on your car and you ever done the rod bearings, it's like you're just, like you have the cigarette lighter on a stick of dynamite, just lighting the wick and pinching it out, lighting the wick and pinching it out. It's only gonna work out so long before it explodes in your face. And it's a $10,000 engine. So good luck. Make sure you change these. If you buy a car you don't know, just change them. So there it is. Rod bearings are done. A lot of you guys are gonna ask, how much does this cost? If I want to do this myself, how much does this job cost? It was nearly 200 bucks for the ACL bearings. I recommend you do at this point, those Clavette 77 bearings did not look well. I don't recommend doing that. I don't recommend doing factory rod bolts. ARP head bolt or rod bolts at that point in time when I bought those a couple months ago for the white car were $385-ish. Vanos lines is 120 to 150, depends on what kind of deal you can find on it. Oil pan gaskets, 40 bucks. If you want to do the O-rings on the secondary oil pump, they're probably 40 bucks for 2 of those. Crazy. And so all together to do this maintenance on this car, minus the control arms and tires and wheel, we're looking at about $788. That's for rod bearing and rod bearing associated stuff. Now, I strongly recommend if you're doing the rod bearings on one of these cars, buy the control arms. They're less than $200 for this car. All the fronts and the rear uppers. So, which is what we'll put on here. We have brand new. They're in the trunk of the white car. I have to go try to fish those out. And also the 788 does include oil change. So 2 5-quart jugs of Motul 10W60 and a man filter. If you take it to a shop, how much will they charge you for this? How much will they charge you for this? Jesus. I've heard the number $2,000 thrown around. I don't know any shop that even look at this car for $2,000. especially if you have $788 for the parts. By the time the shop does the parts for you, it's not going to be $788. It's going to be $1,500, $1,600, $1,700 for the parts, and then their labor. You know, we've done this several times already. I could do it pretty quick. Your average shop's not going to be very quick, and they're charging you anywhere from $100 or $200 an hour of labor. I'd say 100 is pretty damn low these days. So figure it up. It took us from start to finish right now to take everything apart, to redo all the rod bearings, and now we're just to the point where we're putting it back together. I don't know. The problem is we got to stop all the time because people's calling, people's coming by. We got to do other things. We got to leave. We probably got 3.5 hours to this point, I would say, maybe 3. How long is it going to take a shop? It's going to take them all freaking day just to get the subframe out of it, probably, because they're not going to be in a damn hurry, right? They're going to pay by the hour. It's going to be whenever. Also, you got to watch putting all stuff back together. I know this car pretty well at this point. There's no question where any bolts go. Be warned if you have somebody else do it that's not experienced with it. As I said before, with rod bearings, there's no margin for mistake. 0. If we done anything wrong in this, it'll grenade the engine within just a few miles. And we see tons of YouTubers doing that. My recommendation to the many YouTubers before that's tried to rebuild the E60 M5 and failed, and it blew up the next day on the video. Was it Car Ninja did that? Hell, I don't know. M539, his Alpina was knocking. It very well could be due to the factory rod bolts. I'm not even kidding. I think that is a huge margin of error. Because none of those guys are not going to they're going to torque them right to the best of their ability, right? They're not going to not put pre-lube on it, on the bearings. They're not going to not do a bunch of that stuff, right? So I really, truly think a lot of it's the factory rod bolts. Don't buy those. They're slightly cheaper than ARP. Don't cheap out. That's a no-go. But that's going to be it, guys. Thanks for watching the video. I'll be back again with another video very soon. Hopefully this thing running or something close to it. Running and driving, maybe. See you all later. Have a good day.